At Imola, it was a Red Bull 1-2 in one of Ferrari's home races that went into a disaster. Today at Spain, one of Ferrari's drivers' home races, Carlos Sainz, it was another Ferrari disaster and another Red Bull 1-2, and they have now taken the championship lead in both categories, both the drivers with Max Verstappen and the constructors championship. It was obvious. It was a pretty bizarre race. I don't know if bizarre is the right word, but just a lot happened throughout the race that wasn't expected. Mercedes really stepped up their game and they were competitive today, holding off both of the Red Bulls for most of a good chunk of the race before, eventually pit strategy and then obviously fresher tires. So that would be pit strategy. But Russell looked really good today. Hamilton was involved in a lap 1 incident and he recovered and ended up getting a top 5. Verstappen has now taken the championship lead after Leclerc had some sort of power unit issue. That's what Ferrari is calling it. They're saying an unidentified power unit issue. Team orders are back in play. Only 6 races into the season. That's a little disappointing, but still, we'll talk about that a bit. But a lot of unexpected things happened today, and, reliability has been a talk all year long, but it's been on the Red Bull side of things. Verstappen and Perez both DNF'd in that first race of the season at Bahrain when running, second, third, or second, fourth. Verstappen did not finish at Australia due to an issue. He had mechanical problems during practice at Miami. He had DRS problems this whole weekend. So reliability has really been a problem for Red Bull. But today it struck Ferrari. Leclerc, he was leading comfortably by like a half minute over Verstappen, Perez, Russell, whoever was in second at the time. I think it was Russell. And all of a sudden, he comes on the radio, starts yelling, no, like something's wrong. You see him slowing down the track. At first, I thought it was a lap car passing him. Like maybe the lap car had fresher tires and he's just letting him go by to prevent any issues. But then he kept going slow. And then he kept going slow and he went into the pits and retired the car. That was the biggest shock of the day, I would have to say. Just because, obviously, Ferrari has been fast all year. One of the, if not the best car, the second best car, but maybe the best car. I think that's still up for debate between the Ferrari and the Red Bull for who is the fastest. But still, he had a big lead, got a really good start, had covered Verstappen off. He had done everything perfectly up to that point, and the car just dies. I mean, it just gave up on him, basically. I don't know what the issue is. Ferrari hasn't said the issue yet. If they have, I'll figure that out later. Anyways, then Russell is leading the race. It was Russell in second. And Verstappen is all over his tail. And you're thinking, oh, Verstappen will get by easily. But no, Verstappen doesn't have DRS because they've been having that issue all weekend, as I had mentioned earlier. And this track is very difficult to pass at. So Verstappen did not have an easy time doing that. In fact, he didn't do that. And Verstappen himself wouldn't have been in that position if on lap 13, he had spun himself out. Verstappen was running second, a couple of seconds behind Leclerc, and he just turn 3, turn 4, just spun himself out into the gravel, was able to get out, came out behind Russell, came out behind Perez, came out just in front of whoever was in fifth at the time. So Carlos Sainz had done the same thing a few laps earlier while he was in fifth place. So there was something there, or the drivers, that was just a mistake-prone area. But both of those guys, 2 of the top drivers in Formula 1 currently, just spun it. The reigning world champion and then one of the guys in one of the most competitive cars, Carlos Sainz, just spun it. But yeah, that was bizarre. Magnussen and Hamilton had contact on lap 1. What else happened in this race? I'm trying to think. I felt like a lot happened. Zhou Guanyu, he did not finish due to a mechanical problem. We'll go through the results. But one of the big things I want to talk about, team orders. Team orders has been around in Formula 1. There's no secret about this. One of the most famous examples, Austria 2002 with Barrichello and Schumacher. Valtteri, it's James, that whole thing with Bottas and Hamilton over the past 5 or 6 years. But today, it struck again, but it was worded weird. They said, Verstappen was on the 3-stop strategy, Perez was on the 2-stop strategy, and Verstappen was catching Perez. But they came on the radio to Perez and they said something like, I think it was like, all right, hey, Checo, Max is catching up to you. If he's faster, let him through. Or like, you're fine as is, but if he is faster, don't fight him. Something like that. It's race number 6 of the season, and it's not like Perez has 30 points, Verstappen has 100. Coming into this race, there was only, I think, 20 points between the two. So that's less than a race difference. So, yeah, obviously you don't want your two guys wrecking each other for the win. But at the same time, I think, there was a lot of time left and Verstappen had the fresher tires. So I think Verstappen would have gotten by him eventually. But with the lack of DRS that Verstappen had, or the inconsistency of the DRS working, and him not being able to get around Russell for the longest time, it could have potentially been a good battle. It potentially could have been an intense battle, and it could have been for the win. It could have been interesting, You can catch up to a guy, but, what are you going to do with him once you get there? So I think that could have been very interesting. I think it could have made it more intense, more fun of a battle for the win, but team orders got in the way. I think it's too early in the season for team orders, especially when they were that close in the championship. But, yeah, I think it would have been fun to see those two battle for the win. Two very different drivers in terms of how they drive, and especially with the different strategy. Obviously, Perez on the older tires, I think he would have gotten past eventually, but we saw the Red Bull is superior to the Mercedes currently, and Verstappen couldn't get past Russell for the longest time. So maybe it could have been the same thing with Perez. It could have been a long-lasting battle. Maybe Verstappen, the tires would have kicked in eventually and he would have gotten by Perez, but I would have liked to see them battle for the win, but unfortunately, team orders exist. And, yeah, hopefully that's not a running story the whole year. I thought that would have been fun to see those two battle out, as I've said like 10 times now. But I guess let's look at the results of the race today. Verstappen gets his 4th win of the year, his 24th career victory. I think he tied Fangio on the all-time wins list with that one. Fangio, obviously 5-time champion back in the way early days of Formula One. Many people consider him the greatest of all time. Up there in that conversation with Hamilton, Schumacher, Senna. But yeah, that's a pretty big achievement for him. He's been in Formula One since 2014, but he got his first win at Spain in 2016 after the two Mercedes took each other out that year. This year, he got himself a win after Leclerc took himself out. Technically, it wasn't Leclerc because it was the car. But anyways, point being, Verstappen, his 4th win of the season. Every time he's finished a race this year, he has won, so he continues that trend. But he takes the championship lead for the first time since Abu Dhabi in 2021. Of course, Leclerc has led every single race up to this point. But, yeah, it was more than a 40-point lead at one point, and Verstappen and Red Bull have just closed it rapidly. Obviously, at Imola, with Leclerc spinning late in that one, giving up the podium basically with that spin and finishing 6th, and Verstappen winning the sprint, that was a huge chunk gained there. And then last week at Miami, that was like the minimum gained because they finished 1-2. Not the minimum, but, for a 1-2, Leclerc did all he could do there, and then this week was the biggest possible gain, minus 1 point because Verstappen didn't get the fastest lap. But winning the race and then your championship rival Leclerc doesn't even finish, and that's how they were able to close the gap from more than 40 points down to taking the lead of the championship. So, yeah, that was a big deal for them, obviously. And then the constructor side of things, another double podium for Red Bull, another 1-2 for Red Bull, with Perez getting second here. It's his third second-place finish of the year, I believe. I think he got second at Australia as well as Imola. He's been having a really good, strong start to the year. Last year, it wasn't the greatest start to the year, but, he did get a podium at France, I think, by this point last year. I think France was at the beginning part of the schedule. But anyways, he's had a really strong start to the season. He's got a pole. He's got a few podiums. So it seems like he's getting close to that win if team orders don't get, in the way, of course. But Perez has looked really good this year. He's been qualifying in the top 5 consistently, the first 2 rows consistently. He's been getting on the podium a little bit more consistently, so he's had a really good start to the year. And he's helping Red Bull out a lot, as obviously they are leading the constructors' standings. Third place, George Russell continues to show how good he is. He has had top 5 in every single race this year. That is very impressive. Mercedes is the 3rd best car. It's really prior to this race, it was like they were in that awkward middle ground. They were nowhere near Red Bull or Ferrari, but they were like way ahead of whoever's behind them. You know, Alfa Romeo, McLaren, Alpine, whoever it may be. This week, they made a big step up. Russell qualified on the 2nd row. They had pretty good speed all weekend long. Looked good in the race today. Were holding up the Red Bulls. Hamilton was ahead of Sainz until like the last 2 laps. Mercedes called on the radio like, your car's about to die or something. Like, stop going fast. And Hamilton would have finished 4th ahead of Sainz if it wasn't for that. So they looked pretty good this weekend. And, you know, if they can just take another step up, could it be a 3-team fight for the championship? I don't know. But, yeah, really good day for him. 4th, Carlos Sainz. He continues his point streak at his home race. But you got to feel a little bit disappointed just because, you know, Ferrari is one of the best cars this year, one of the top 2 cars. You would have had to expect a podium, but a bad start off the line. He was like 5th or 6th after lap 1, and then while he was in that 5th or 6th position, he spun himself out into the gravel, fell back out of the top 10, but he rallied back to finish in 4th place, and yeah, so he carried Ferrari. It was a bad day for Ferrari. Really bad day for Ferrari. Could have potentially been a podium. Could it have been a win if he didn't spin early on, if he had gotten a better start? You know, it's tough to say, obviously. But, yeah, at least he got a good chunk of points for Ferrari. You know, Leclerc obviously not finishing is going to be a huge hurt. But, yeah, it's a team sport. That's how racing goes sometimes. 5th place, Lewis Hamilton. Solid race for him. His streak of Spanish Grand Prix wins ends here today. He had won everything from 2017 to 2021. But, yeah, 5th place. Honestly, a really good rally from him. He was involved in the lap 1 crash, as I said, with Kevin Magnussen. They had made contact. Magnussen came into him on, like, turn 4. He had, like, turned down, like, right into him. So that one was on Magnussen, I think, rewatching the replay. At first, I thought Lewis Hamilton run him off just because of the camera angle, but I think it was more on Magnussen than Hamilton. So, yeah, but then Hamilton, a great job. I don't know if it was a strategy. Hamilton obviously drove great there today, and a 5th place finish for him after being down in 19th, 20th for the first stint of the race. That's a great recovery for Hamilton, and a really good chunk of points for Mercedes as well. With the 3rd and 5th, that's going to be really good for their constructors' cause. But once again, they're like securely in 3rd in the constructors. They closed in on Ferrari, I bet, today, but, you know, it's still going to be a pretty decent gap. 6th place, Valtteri Bottas. Bottas, once again, like, just absolutely amazing. He's been doing great for Alfa Romeo this year. He's got somewhere in the 30s in the points this year. Yeah, he's been looking great this year. Honestly, he really has been. Alfa Romeo has usually been one of the backmarker teams, you know, that 8th to 10th range the past few years. But Bottas has been consistently in the points. He's been in Q3. He was up in the top 5 for a bit there, but a 6th place finish. He's looked really good all season long. So Bottas once again showing how good he is. 7th place, Esteban Ocon. Really good day for him. Double points for Alpine. 8th, Lando Norris. 9th place, Fernando Alonso started from the back of the grid in his home race. Ends up getting a couple points there. 10th place, Yuki Tsunoda. 11th place, Sebastian Vettel. 12th place, Daniel Ricciardo. 13th, Pierre Gasly. 14th, Mick Schumacher. He made it into Q3 the first time this week and finished 14th, though. He was up into 6th for a bit. I don't know if it was the pace or what, but 14th. 15th, Lance Stroll. 16th, Nicholas Latifi. 17th, Kevin Magnussen. As I said, he was a part of that lap 1 incident with Lewis Hamilton. 18th, Alex Albon. So Latifi beats Albon, I think, for the first time this season. Then we got our DNFs. We got Zhou Guanyu. He had a mechanical failure early in the race. And then, of course, Charles Leclerc out of the lead. His car dies. So, yeah. Honestly, a not terrible race. Watching Verstappen versus Russell was extremely fun. That battle there. Watching Perez, Russell for a bit, that was fun. Had a few different leaders up there. Thought that was all right. But yeah, I think the Leclerc DNF really kind of, in terms of the win, fighting for the win, that kind of made it a little bit more interesting. I think if Leclerc doesn't, his car doesn't die, I think he wins that race easily. But yeah, I mean, Spain's always been kind of like that track where it's like difficult to pass and stuff. But yeah, it was a fun battle between Verstappen and Russell. I think that was like one of the highlights of the races. And that was like what they showed for like the whole first like half of the race. But yeah, anyways, that's all I got for the F1 side of things. I will be at a NASCAR race today. The All-Star race for the NASCAR Cup Series have been at the track all weekend. So if you're an F1 fan, you've never seen what it's like to be at a NASCAR race, check out my videos from the past few days. Check out my video tonight. Check out my video tomorrow. And yeah, I'll post all that. So yeah, thanks for watching this. If you liked it, leave a like. Subscribe to the channel. Pastor Maldonado was at the race today. The greatest Williams driver of all time. Yeah, he's the most. 10 years later, he's still the most recent Williams winner. How about that?